Hello everyone, this is Mr. Lloyd and this video is for paper 2 of the Edexcel 9:1 specification for GCSE. This is a sample assessment material because at the time of recording there haven't been any past papers for this new specification, which means there won't be any examiner notes, and also there's no past papers to go by. So this is one of the few papers that can help you revise. Okay, so we're going to start off. So normally, like a lot of GCSEs, they start with some easy multiple choice questions. This is a higher paper, by the way. If you're foundation, you have a lot more multiple choice questions, but higher papers have a few. So we'll start with this. Climacteric fruits are fruits that can ripen after they have been removed from the plant. Which plant hormone can be used to ripen a climacteric fruit? There you go. So you've got A, auxin, B, ethene, C, gibberellin, and D, insulin. Go. Right, so the answer to that is ethene. Okay, and you may have heard the anecdote that she put ripened bananas in with fruit to make them ripe as well. Well, that's because the bananas release ethene to send a message to a nearby fruit to ripen. When climacteric fruits ripen, they release gas during respiration. Which gas is released by these fruits during respiration? A, carbon dioxide, B, carbon monoxide, C, oxygen, and D, nitrogen. The answer is A, carbon dioxide. Okay, so these two questions talk about climacteric fruits. There is, you may not have heard of them, but it doesn't matter because they relate to something you have done. So the trick here is to look past this new information and find the information that you can relate to. So this is to do with hormones being released, and this is to do with respiration. Okay, so anything releases carbon dioxide during respiration. Okay, I expect the most commonly wrong answer, common option that's answering correctly is oxygen, because plants do release oxygen, but that's because of photosynthesis. So remember, respiration and photosynthesis are the opposite of each other. With respiration, glucose and oxygen react to form carbon dioxide and water and release energy. And for photosynthesis, carbon dioxide and water use energy from the sun to create glucose and oxygen. Right, question B. A student investigated how temperature affects the decomposition of climacteric fruits. A student placed a plastic box containing a banana in a water bath at 20 degrees Celsius. The student recorded the time taken for the banana to turn completely black. The investigation was repeated at 30 degrees Celsius and 40 degrees Celsius. State two factors the student would need to control to ensure that only the temperature affected the rate of decomposition of the banana. 2 marks, 1 mark each. You're just stating, so the command word is state, so you don't need to explain or anything. Off you go. Right, so the factors that you could have included were the size of the banana, the age or ripeness of the banana, because if some bananas are really ripe and some bananas aren't ripe at all, the riper they are, the sooner they'll turn black, the size of the box, available oxygen, the humidity inside the box. And it says accept any other relevant factors. Can't think of any off the top of my head, but that sort of gives the examiner leeway to think of some. The results of this investigation are shown in figure 1. So the temperature of the water bath is 20, 30, 40. The time taken for the banana to turn completely black in days. So if in a 20 degree water bath it takes 16 days, in a 30 degree water bath it takes 7 days, in a 40 degree water bath it takes 4 days. State a conclusion that can be made from results. So a state question is just say what you see. It's a 1 mark. Off you go. Right, so the answer is, as the temperature increases, the rate of decomposition decreases, or something using the numbers. So as the banana decomposes faster at 40 degrees Celsius. Right, explain. So this command word is explain, so you need to say because somewhere, why the temperature affects the rate of decomposition. 2 marks. Off you go. Right, so you should say, so you need an explanation that combines identification and reasoning. So you need to say with what the mechanism for the decomposition is. So that's the enzymes. Enzymes cause the breakdown of large biological molecules into smaller ones. As the temperature rises, there are more reactions between the enzymes and the biological molecules. Or microorganisms reproduce faster, more breakdown of large molecules into smaller molecules. So there you go. So if you have an explain question, you need to give a statement and then say why. Right, on to question 2. A student investigated the distribution of poppy plants in a park. Figure 2 shows a sketch of the park and the diagram of a poppy plant. So there's the park, here's a poppy plant. A student placed a 1 meter squared quadrat at 10 meter intervals between point A and point B and recorded the number of poppy plants in each quadrat. Name the technique the student used to study the distribution of poppy plants. That's a mark. So naming something is just giving an answer. Now you should know this very thoroughly because this is one of your required practicals. Make sure you know all your required practicals for this paper. Okay, off you go. This method is called a belt transect. Belt is an optional word, which is why it is in brackets. As he said, so this should have been a required practical. So you should have gone out at some point in a field, and you should have with a quadrat, and you should measured somewhere. Normally they do it from the tree, from under a tree, and then you go beyond the tree, and then you measure the number of a particular plant every meter or 5 meters or so. They normally use a tree because a tree has lots of shade underneath, so there shouldn't be many plants under the tree because there isn't any light for them. And then as you get further from the tree, there shall be more plants. Figure 3 shows the number of poppy plants at 10 meter intervals from point A to point B. So 0, point A, there are 12. 10 meters away, there's 10. 20 meters away, there's 11. 30 meters away, there's 8, and 40 meters away at point B, there is 6. Okay, so just have a look at the map. Explain the effect of the woodland on the distribution of poppy plants. Well, I may have kind of given you some clues already. This is an explain question, so you'll need to say an observation. So the woodland will do X to the poppy plants, and then Y. As in explain why. Right, off you go. Right, so here we have again. So as you can see, for explain questions, they say an identification via a judgment and then a conclusion. So the identification is normally 1 mark, and then the conclusion is the rest of them. So what you should have said is the poppy plants decrease as you get close to the woodland because the trees block light and light is needed for photosynthesis. So that's kind of the practical you probably would have done when you did this. Question part 3. Devise a plan that uses a quadrat to estimate the number of poppy plants in the field. So this should have been the other half of the required practical. Off you go. Right, so what you should have done is randomly place the quadrat several times. Normally, you do it by throwing it behind you, so you don't even look where you're throwing it. Record the number of poppy plants in each quadrat, and then method for scaling up the area sampled to a total area of the field. So what that means is, say your quadrat is 1 meter squared, and so what you do is you put lots of quadrats down. So say you put 5 quadrats worth down, and then you've got the numbers of 4, 6, 5, 3, and 7. Right, so that's how many poppies there are. So you take an average of that. So the average of that would be 5 poppies per quadrat. Okay, so each quadrat's 1 meter squared. So then what you do is you measure the size of the field you are covering. So let's say the size of the field is 500 meters squared. Okay, so what you have now is you know there are 5 poppies per meter squared. The size of the field is 500 meters squared. So you multiply the number of poppies in 1 meter squared by 500, and then you get the answer, which is 2,500 poppies per meter squared. Okay, so a more complicated one, say you got an average of 6 poppies per half meter squared because you had a very small quadrat. and it was 200 meter squared field. You do 6 divided by a half, so you get 12, so that's 12 poppies per meter squared, and then you times that by 600 to get the size of the number of poppies in the field. Okay, right, moving on. Well, you times it by the size of the field. The woodland is a protected conservation area. Explain why this woodland increases the biodiversity of the park. 2 marks. So it's an explain again. Off you go. Right, so you should say, here's the common statement. Woodland provides a different type of habitat. It allows different species to live in the park. You could also accept the idea that human intervention is controlled, and a specific example. So woodlands provide nesting sites for birds. Okay, next question, peak flow meter. So unless you may have been told this already, but each question relates to a particular topic in the specification. Although the actual paper one I've heard sort of mixed and matched a bit more, so you need to be careful. When you look at a question, think about which topic is this about, and then it helps you narrow down. A peak flow meter is used to measure the rate in which air is blown out of the lungs. To use a peak flow meter, a person takes a deep breath and exhales, as in blows out, the air as hard and as fast as possible into the peak flow meter. People with asthma can have a reduced peak flow. A student investigated the peak flow of 5 people with asthma and 5 people without asthma. All the people were male and the same age. Give 2 other factors the student should control when selecting people for this investigation. 2 marks, so you're just stating 2 things. Off you go. Right, so you need to say something like, well, these things: weight, height, fitness, other medical conditions, drug intake or medication, and you can accept other valid factors. Right, next question. The mean peak flow for people without asthma is 630 decimeters cubed per minute. The mean peak flow for people with asthma is 480 decimeters cubed per minute. Use the mean peak flow values to calculate the percentage decrease in peak flow for the people with asthma. 2 marks. Right, so this is a calculate question. So what you do, so percentage is, what you do is you work out the difference between the numbers, so percentage increase or decrease, and then you do the difference divided by the initial value times 100. So in this case it's 24%, and you are allowed 23.8% because these numbers might be to 3 significant figures. They haven't really been specific, so you can have 2 or 3 significant figures because those zeros could be significant or not. So and if you write the correct answer without working, you get the marks, because there's no way you can just get the answer without the working. If you guess 24, then they just give you the marks because you're extremely lucky. So just a couple of reminders. The new GCSE guidelines have stated that biology papers should contain at least 10% maths questions, chemistry papers should contain at least 20% maths questions, and physics papers should contain at least 30% maths questions. So your biology paper will have at least 10% questions that relate either to graphs or calculating things. Now, if you don't like maths, that might sound bad, but actually, in the case of biology, it's quite a good thing, because there are so few things to do with maths that you can pretty much guarantee certain questions will come up. So a percentage change question is quite likely to come up. If you go to a website called mygcsescience.com and go to the blog, there is a blog post called Math Skills in GCSE Biology. It was made on the 27th of Feb. So that gives a whole list of biology calculations. So there might be magnification in Edexcel, because that comes under part 1, topic 1, which is in both papers. There's sort of estimates, so like measure the cell and then measure the magnification and work it out. Estimate the population of a stationary species, so that's using quadrats, that might come up. Estimate the population of musing species, which you don't need to know because that's OCR only. Percentage change, so it says change in mass there, but it could be change in anything divided by the original number. Efficiency, that's to do with biomass transfer. Area of a circle probably won't come up. That's used for the antibiotics question, which is which is more likely in paper 1. It's the practical way you've got to do a circle and you've got to work out how much of the circle is clear of bacteria. Rate of reaction might come up because you've got to do transpiration, the rate of transpiration, so the amount of water lost per minute, for example. You just do the amount lost divided by the time. Rate shouldn't be strange to you because you might have also had to calculate the rate of an enzyme reaction, and also in chemistry you've got to calculate the rate of reaction. And those are the sort of main math skills in biology. So if you want to give them a more thorough reading, then it's mygcsescience.com. So if you go to blog, and then if you scroll down, you'll get to the 27th of February. It says Math Skills in GCSE Biology. There's loads of other useful blog posts, Math Skills in Physics, multi-topic questions in physics, revision guide. There's applications of knowledge to unfamiliar context, how to use decimal places and significant figures. So there we go. Have a go at all of those things. Right, we'll move down. Explain the effect of reduced airflow in lungs on aerobic respiration. 3 marks. Off you go. Right. So the blah, 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 blah. There's less aerobic respiration because there is reduced oxygen entering the lungs, which reduces the oxygen supply to the blood cells, except reduced removal of carbon dioxide. Okay. So that's to do with Dr. Asthma. Right, D. Explain why people with asthma may start to respire anaerobically more quickly than people without asthma when exercising at the same intensity. 2 marks. Explanation. Go. So what you need to say is there is less oxygen available for aerobic respiration, so they start to respire anaerobically more quickly. Right, on to the next question. Question 4. Tuna are carnivorous fish. In the wild, tuna eat smaller fish called mackerel. Mackerel eat sand eels. Sand eels eat microscopic plant life called phytoplankton. Sketch a pyramid of biomass for this food chain and label each level with the name of the organism. So a couple of words here. Sketch means you don't have to do anything to scale. If you sketch a graph, you are just sketching the line, which way the line will go. So if you're sketching a pyramid of biomass, you just have to show which bit is bigger than the other. You don't have to show how much bigger. And then label. Label's pretty easy. You just need to say which one's which. Okay, so off you go, draw a pyramid. So the pyramid of biomass. So here's an example. So it says correct shape, exact width not required. Ignore a pyramid drawn as a triangle and the correct label. So there's phytoplankton, which is huge because plant biomass is much bigger than any animal biomass. Eaten by sand eels, which is smaller, and then mackerel, which is smaller still, and then tuna, which is smaller still. So the clue is in the name pyramid of biomass. So pyramid of biomass, pyramids are bigger at the bottom and smaller at the top. I know some pyramids don't follow that rule, but a pyramid of biomass does. A pyramid of numbers might not. So if you've got one tree feeds several hundred insects, which is why you have a pyramid of biomass, because if you drew the pyramid of biomass with the tree, then the tree is much bigger. Some young tuna are kept in fish farms. The tuna in fish farms are fed more food than they would normally catch in the wild, so they grow quickly. When a tuna reaches 35 kilograms, it is removed from the fish farm and sold as food. Figure 5 shows the effect of feeding tuna different protein diets. So there's high protein, medium protein, low protein. That's the time in months. That's the mass of the tuna, the average mass. State and explain which diet would be given to the tuna so they can be sold in the shortest possible time. 4 marks. There's the graph to look at. Go. Right, so you need to say a high protein diet, so that's the identification, because the tuna reached 35 kilograms in 3 months, whereas the medium protein diet takes 4.5 months, and the low protein diet, they do not even reach 35 kilograms. There you go, they only reach sort of about 30, 29 even. But yeah, so you just need to be stating data. So if you ever have to explain something from a graph, it always helps to give some numbers from the graph. Okay. C. Some tuna living in the wild can grow larger than 350 kilograms. When a tuna eats a kilogram of mackerel, the tuna gains 60 grams in mass. Calculate the mass of mackerel a tuna would need to have to eat to increase its mass by 300 kilograms. Right, so the clue here, so the thing they're testing here is you're given this in grams and this in kilograms. So you're going to have to do a unit conversion. Off you go. So you do 60 divided by 1,000 to get 0.06 because that is what 60 grams is in kilograms. So now you both have your both numbers in kilograms. You do 300 divided by 0.06. So that's 5,000. Okay, so there you go. So that's what you would have to do. So you'd have to eat 5,000 kilograms of mackerel to increase the mass by 300 kilograms. Yeah, so you just need to remember your SI unit conversions. So kilo is 1,000. So if you're trying to convert something from without a prefix to kilo, you divide by 1,000 because it's a bigger measurement. Okay. If you're trying to convert something with a prefix with a smaller measurement, you have to times it. So going from something without a prefix to milli, so milli is 1,000th. So there are 1,000 millimeters in a meter. Then if you have 1 meter, you times it by 1,000 to get 1,000 millimeters. Right, explain why fish farmers keep the fish confined in netted areas. 2 marks. You'd say to restrict movement so less energy is lost, or to prevent predators so the fish aren't harmed. Right, question D part 2. Give 1 reason why there is an increase in the number of fish farms in the world today. 1 mark. So giving is not an explanation, it's just give. So you could say increase in world population, humans eating a high protein diet, increase in a preference for fish protein, except other relevant reasons. So you can, so in GCSEs, unless there is a phrase here that is underlined, you can paraphrase. You don't have to write the exact words. So maybe you'd want to say instead of humans eating a high protein diet, you could say something for humans changing their diet or they're moving away from grains, etc. Maybe you could say something like overfishing if you know about that. So, I mean, they're all relevant reasons. So, yes. Right, we're on to question 5. A student is growing algae to make algal balls to investigate how light intensity affects photosynthesis. This should ring a lot of bells because this is a required practical. A small culture of algae is added to a large bottle of distilled water. Air is then bubbled through and the bottle is placed in front of a light source. After 4 weeks, enough algae have grown for the student to make algal balls. Figure 6 shows the apparatus used. There you go. Why is the air bubbled through the distilled water containing the algae? Is it A, to provide oxygen for photosynthesis, B, to provide carbon dioxide for photosynthesis, C, to provide carbon dioxide for respiration, or D, to provide nitrogen for respiration? Right, have a go at that one. The answer is B, to provide carbon dioxide for photosynthesis, because you can work this out, even if you know nothing about it, is oxygen isn't needed for photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide isn't needed for respiration. Nitrogen isn't needed for respiration. So the only one that works is that you need carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. Which part of an algal cell absorbs the light energy to make glucose? Is it A, the ribosome in the chloroplast, B, the chlorophyll in the vacuole, C, the chlorophyll in the chloroplast, or D, the ribosome in the nucleus? Have a go. The answer is C, the chlorophyll in the chloroplast, because that's where it is. So there aren't ribosomes in the chloroplast, there isn't chlorophyll in the vacuole, the chlorophyll's in the chloroplast, and there aren't ribosomes in the nucleus, and they don't absorb light anyway. So that is testing you on your parts of a cell, which goes back to chapter 1. So remember, part 1 is also tested in paper 2. To make the algal balls, the algae is mixed with sodium alginate. The student uses syringe to add the mixture drop by drop to calcium chloride solution where the algal balls form. State what algal balls need to be washed before being used. Go. Answer is to remove calcium chloride solution. There we go. Because, yes, you don't want that messing up. State one relevant safety precaution that should be used when making the algal balls. The answer is to wash hands after use, wear gloves and goggles. Wearing goggles is a pretty safe bet for a safety precaution. If you've got anything that's even remotely corrosive or anything, or nasty for your skin or eyes, wearing goggles is good. The student placed some algal balls into each of the 5 small glass bottles containing hydrogen carbonate indicator. Each bottle was sealed with a lid and placed at a different distance from the light source. Hydrogen carbonate indicator changes colour due to the amount of carbon dioxide in the solution. The investigation was left for 50 minutes and the colour of the hydrogen carbonate solution was recorded. Figure 8 shows this investigation. Hopefully you've done something like this at school or wherever you've learned it. State 2 variables the student will need to control in this investigation. Off you go. Answer is any 2 from the same number or size of algal balls, the same volume of hydrogen carbonate solution, because if there's more hydrogen carbonate solution, it will take more carbon dioxide, oxygen to turn. Same concentration of hydrogen carbonate, the same size of bottle, or BG, reduce influence of external light and the temperature of the room, because as you should know, temperature affects photosynthesis. At the start of the investigation, the hydrogen carbonate indicator was red in colour. Figure 9 shows the colour of the hydrogen carbonate indicator solutions that have different pH. So if it's yellow, it's got a pH of 7.6, orange is 8.0, red is 8.4, magenta is 8.8, and purple is 9.2. Explain why the hydrogen carbonate indicator in a bottle nearest to the light source turned purple. Off you go. Right, so you'd say the bottle closest to the light source will photosynthesize the most due to the greater intensity. This will remove carbon dioxide and the solution will become less acidic or more alkaline and it will make the pH increase. So there's a bit of head flipping here in the sense that, so first of all you need to know that when carbon dioxide is dissolved in water, it makes the water more acidic. So more acidic things reduce the pH. So you need to remember how the pH scale works. 1 is the strongest acid. Then it goes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is the weakest acid. 7 is neutral. It's not acidic or alkaline. 8 is a weak alkaline. And then as you get higher, you get stronger alkalines. I like to think of the pH scale like a seesaw. The further from the middle, the stronger it is. Okay? So if you're closer to the light, there's more photosynthesis, so it reduces the carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide makes water acidic, and then that makes the pH more alkaline, which means it's bigger. And then the biggest pH is purple. Now, right, before I move on with this, there's something I need to tell you. We were talking about math skills earlier, so this wasn't measured in this question. But if you do higher, you need to know about the inverse square law maths calculation for this. Right, so this wasn't in the My GCSE Science blog post, but what the inverse square law states is that the photosynthesis of a plant is inversely proportional to the light intensity squared, to the distance, squared. So the light intensity is inversely proportional to the distance squared, which means if you double the distance, then what you do is you square it to get a 4. So if you times it by 2, 2 squared is 4. And then inverse means you do 1 divided by that number. So actually the light intensity is a quarter of whatever it was before you doubled the distance. Okay, so it's quite a straightforward calculation. So this little symbol means proportional to, so it doesn't mean equals because there'll be some other values involved, but you don't need to care about them. All you need to know is how to work out the light intensity. So with distance, so for example here, if you've got a distance of 0.2 meters from there, so the light intensity will be 25 units. So arbitrary means they've just been, the arbitrary is not like a centimetre or metre, it is just a unit that you have picked randomly to help you. And then if it's 0.4 metres squared, if it's 0.4 metres, then you square it and you get 6.25 arbitrary units. So you've doubled the distance and you've about quartered the intensity, because 6.25 is a quarter of 25. So that's another math skill that you might need to know for this paper. Right, question 6. A scientist investigated the role of gibberellins in seed germination. The scientist placed 20 cress seeds on agar jelly containing gibberellins. The scientist counted the number of seeds that had germinated after 5 days. Figure 10 shows the results. So you've got to count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so you go. Explain how the scientist could use a control to improve this investigation. Off you go. Right, you would set up the same apparatus with 20 seeds, place the agar in the petri dish without any gibberellin. The control would allow the scientist to see how the plants were affected by the gibberellins in comparison with those grown on the agar only. So there you go, because this petri dish on its own is meaningless. Okay, you put gibberellins on agar and it's produced this many cress plants, but you don't know what effect the gibberellins have had. So what you need to do is compare it to something that hasn't had any gibberellins on it. State 2 commercial uses of gibberellins, not including their role in germination. That's because they've just talked about germination. 2 marks, off you go. So you could have said fruit formation, flower formation, production of seedless fruit. Or you could say larger fruit, fewer flowers, or other correct use of gibberellins. So I don't know if you know this, but bananas should have massive black seeds, but they don't because of gibberellins. Why don't you Google image it? After germination, roots grow downwards and shoots grow upwards. Which row of the table is correct for the growth response shown by roots and shoots? So is it the root has positive gravitropism and the shoot has positive gravitropism? Is it B, the root has positive gravitropism and the shoot has positive phototropism? Is it C, the root has positive phototropism and the shoot has positive gravitropism? Is it D, the root has positive phototropism and the shoot has positive phototropism? Off you go. Answer is B. The root has positive gravitropism and the shoot has positive phototropism. Now, just in case you don't know what these words mean, so tropism means you want to eat it, basically, literally. Obviously, you don't want to eat gravity. The gravy bit means you want to go the direction gravity says, which is down, and positive means you want to go towards it. So positive gravitropism means you want to go down towards where gravity pulls you. Positive phototropism means you want to go towards where the light is, and that would be upwards. Okay. If it was negative phototropism, you want to go away from the light. Okay. Explain how auxins can cause a plant root that is growing horizontally to grow downwards. 3 marks. So this is what you say. Auxins accumulate on the underside of the roots. They cause an inhibition of cell elongation. The cells on the top side of the root elongate more, causing the root to grow downwards. There you go. Right, we're on question 7, which is definitely about food. So figure 11 shows the nutritional information of 2 different varieties of biscuit. There you go. I'm not going to read all that out. State why it is better to compare nutritional information per 100 grams of biscuit rather than per biscuit. Go. Right, the answer is the biscuits may have a different mass, or the mass of biscuits is not known. Okay. So you can't just go, oh, well, variety B is better because it has fewer calories than variety A per biscuit, because variety A might have huge biscuits and variety B might have small biscuits. So you have to compare for a known mass of each biscuit. Explain why variety A would be a better choice of biscuit for a person with type 2 diabetes. 2 marks. There you go. You can have a look at the data. Off you go. Right, so you should be looking at the sugar. So diabetes is all about blood sugar. The next, so type 2 diabetics are not able to regulate glucose levels in their body. This variety has less sugar. So look at it. 100 grams is 0.4 grams of sugar. 16.1 grams of sugar. Well, there you go. Clear winner. Explain the role of glucagon in the body. 3 marks. Off you go. Right, so glucagon. If blood glucose levels become too low, glucagon is released from the pancreas, causing glycogen in the liver to convert it into glucose, returning glucose blood levels to normal. This is one of the many negative feedback loops in biology. You need to know all about your negative feedback loops, like water regulation, and also with egg release for the human period and cycle. Explain how chewing food helps with digestion. Off you go. The answer is breaks up a biscuit into smaller pieces, which increases the surface area of the biscuit so enzymes can break it down quicker. Now, if negative feedback loops is one of the most prevalent things in paper 2 biology, then surface area must be the second most prevalent thing in paper 2 biology, or all of biology, because chewing is covered in surface area. Also, adaptations of animals is surface area. Enzymes is surface area. So surface area. If you ever see something about breaking something down into smaller pieces, it is probably to increase the surface area. Normally, you want to increase the surface area, which involves making things smaller, which means there's more things in contact with the air. The only time I can think you want to increase the surface area is if you're a polar bear and you want to reduce your decrease your surface area. If you're a polar bear, you want to reduce your heat loss so you have less surface in contact with the air, because they're very cold out. Right, next question. In the small intestine, large fat droplets are broken down into smaller droplets by a substance called bile. Explain how the smaller fat droplets are digested and enter the bloodstream. 3 marks, go. That's going to close that. I'll open it again. Explain, so the small droplets of fat are broken down by the enzymes lipase into fatty acids and glycerol, and they are absorbed into the bloodstream by diffusion. So I will just get that Edexcel thing back. There we go. Right, there we go. Right. Get that back as well. Right, so question 8. Kidneys. The volume of fluid filtered to the kidneys of a person in a day was 172 decimeters cubed. The volume of urine produced by that same person in the day was 1.4 decimeters cubed. Calculate the percentage of water reabsorbed into the body of that person for that day. Give your answer to 2 decimal places. So 3 marks. 1 mark for the calculation, 1 mark for the answer, and 1 mark telling it's 2 decimal places. Off you go. So, what you do is, you do 172 divided by 1.4, or the take away 1.4, okay, because that's how much is reabsorbed. The urine is the one released. And then you do the change divided by the initial amount, and then you express it to 2 decimal places. So there you go. That's 3 marks on a percentage change, or 2 marks really, 1 mark for you knowing your decimal places. So that's 4 out of 100 marks on percentage change. Because like we say, they've got to find 10% of marks for calculations, and it's quite hard to find a lot of calculations in biology, so they might repeat. A person drank the same volume of water for 2 consecutive days. The second day was much hotter. State how the volume of urine produced on the second day was different from the first day. Off you go. So what you do is the volume of water produced will be lower. Right, explain how water is reabsorbed from the collecting duct of the kidneys. Off you go. It is. Water moves from the collecting duct of the bloodstream by osmosis, where it is in high water concentration, and goes to a low water concentration. Right, explain. 6 marks. Explain how glucose is reabsorbed into the blood of a person and why glucose can be found in the urine of a person with diabetes. So 6 mark questions. 6 mark questions are broken down into 3 levels. Level 1 you get 1 or 2 marks. Level 2 you get 3 or 4 marks. Level 3 you get 5 or 6 marks. You have to answer everything in the level to get to that level, which means you can't write lots of things about one thing and get 6 marks. You have to write enough about every aspect of the question. So there's 2 parts to this question: explaining how glucose is reabsorbed into the blood, and then explaining why glucose can be found in the urine of a person with diabetes. So if you don't address both parts of the question, it's impossible to get 6 marks or 5 marks. Off you go. Right, so you're not included, yeah, and also another point, there'll be loads of points, but you won't have to include all of them. So absorption of glucose is the proximal convoluted tubule. So this is testing your knowledge of the parts inside the kidney. So there's active transport against the concentration gradient unit for respiration. If you've got diabetes, the glucose levels are not controlled, so the glucose levels in the blood are high. It can't all be selectively absorbed, so it passes through the nephron into collecting duct. So there we go. Right, next page. We are almost finished. Hormones control the menstrual cycle. Which row of the table shows where the hormones LH and estrogen are produced? So A, LH is in the pituitary gland and estrogen in the ovaries. B, LH in the ovaries and estrogen in the pituitary gland. C, LH and estrogen both in the ovaries. And D, LH and estrogen both in the pituitary gland. Off we go. The answer is... Oh, sorry. Right, so there you go. So there's the levels. So you're going to have some construction and coherence, and you've got to have structure and coherence and be logical as well. That's a good point. So sorry, for the next one, it's pituitary gland and ovaries. So it's A. Part 2. Figure 12 shows the body temperature and estrogen levels for a fertile woman during a 30-day menstrual cycle. So there you go. Changes in body temperature and changes in the levels of estrogen. Describe a correlation between the body temperature and estrogen levels from day 5 to day 25. 2 marks if you get. Right, so estrogen levels peaks the temperature as it's lowest. The estrogen levels falls, there is a temperature rise. Temperature remains high with higher estrogen levels. So there you go. Question 3. Explain how monitoring a woman's body temperature can be used to increase the chances of becoming pregnant. Go. You would say there is a drop in body temperature prior to ovulation. And then you identify the time when the egg is released. Explain how hormones control the menstrual cycle. This is another 6-mark question. You will probably have 2 6-mark questions in your biology paper. Off you go. So, there are the levels. So you have to make some nice developed structures that are logical. So you've got to say things like FSH released by the pituitary gland. It stimulates the eggs to mature in the follicle. It triggers a rise in estrogen. Estrogen released from the ovaries. The estrogen causes the lining uterus to build up. High levels of estrogen stimulate LH production. Surge of LH to the pituitary gland triggers ovulation. Progesterone is produced in the corpus luteum. Progesterone maintains the lining of the uterus. High levels of estrogen and progesterone inhibit LH and FSH production. As progesterone levels fall, menstruation occurs. Low levels of progesterone and estrogen restart the cycle. Right, next bit. Figure 13 shows a cross-section of a blood vessel. There we go. Magnification times 8. The diameter of the lumen in the figure is 25.0 millimeters. What is the actual diameter? take care. Remember what I said about unit conversions. This is given to you in millimeters. The answers are given to you in meters. So is it 3.1 times 10 to the minus 2 meters, 3.1 times 10 to the minus 3 meters, 2.0 times 10 to the minus 2 meters, or 2.0 times 10 to the minus 3 meters? Off we go. The answer is 3.1 times 10 to the minus 3 meters. So there you go. Which blood vessel delivers deoxygenated blood to the heart? Is it the aorta, the pulmonary artery, the pulmonary vein, the vena cava? It is the vena cava. So the pulmonary vein has to go through the vena cava first. Capillary walls are much thinner than the walls of the blood vessel in figure 13. The lumen of the capillary is also much smaller. Explain how each of these features of the capillary helps it function efficiently. So you've got two things to think about, the lumen and the wall. One thing, off you go. So you'd say the thin walls allow maximum diffusion, there is a shorter diffusion distance, the small lumen slows the blood so more substances diffuse. The percentage of blood flowing through body organs was measured at rest and during various exercises. There we go. So we've got brain, 18%, rest, 4% during exercise, heart, 5% and 5%, kidneys, 20% at rest and 1% at exercise, liver, 25% at rest, 1% at exercise, skin, 7% at rest and 1% at exercise, muscles, 15% at rest and 87% during exercise, and other 10% at rest and 1% at exercise. The volume of the blood is 4.7 litres. Calculate the increase in volume of blood flow through the muscles during vigorous exercise. 3 marks. So it's 4.7 litres, and it goes from 15% to 87%. Off you go. So, this is another percentage change. 18 minus, well, it's not really. 18 minus 15 is 72%. You do 72% of 4.7. So it's either 3.4 or 3.38 litres, depending on your significant figures. Or you could work out 87% and 15% and take them away. Your significant figures, well, there's either 2 or 1, so go with 2, I guess. That's why they didn't say, well, this is to give them to 2 significant figures, so 2 significant figures would be the most appropriate. Explain why there's an increase in blood for the muscles required. Last mark, last question, if you go, during vigorous exercise. And you would say, more glucose and oxygen needs to be delivered to the working muscles, more waste products and carbon dioxide is removed to increase aerobic respiration, releasing more energy to the working muscles. So there we go, that is the sample biology paper. I hope this has helped you. I wish you luck with your biology paper 2s. Just remember there's going to be 10% of math skills. There's going to be at least 2 required practicals, so make sure you revise those. Okay, and so they're in the specification, and good luck.